one of the paradoxes with this is they appear to be so advanced in their physics and their technology, if I should call it that, but at the same time they seem to be crashing a lot, which is a bit of a paradox.
Actually, some of them have not crashed, but have been simply left in the desert, sort of like a gift or a donation. We're still trying to figure that out. So, I mean, some of them do crash, and it can have maybe some of our electromagnetic pulsing and laser pulsing can interfere with their technology, and you might get a crash.
Why do you think another country hasn't come forward with similar disclosures and similar evidence?
I actually think there's a really simple answer for that. I think our allies follow the U.S.'s lead,
right,
and I think our adversaries, primarily China and Russia, have no reason to go public. They don't have the same sort of societies and dynamics. Like, Xi can do what he wants anyway. What's the advantage to him? Same thing with Putin. There is no advantage. And when you look at it that way, you really quickly get to this is the way it is for that reason.
They did a study in 2026 and found that 45 planets are likely capable of supporting life. They called this the habitable zone, out of more than 6,000 planets discovered so far by NASA. There are approximately 1 trillion galaxies in the universe, and within these galaxies, 100,000 planets could potentially host life, according to Oxford University. Now, I believe that if you think about the entire universe, I believe that we're not the only life in the universe.
Yes, right.
I think that's
a very scientific conclusion.
Probabilistically, it would be pretty incredible if we were. I mean, it's almost inconceivable that we are. The question of whether that life has been here is a question that for me is still a big question mark. Because I think Elon, whatever you think about Elon, he is someone that seems to just say what he thinks. And this is part of what's caused his companies a lot of problem, is he seems to be pretty unfiltered. He has been asked multiple times as well if he believes that there are aliens in our galaxy, and he has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't believe that to be the case. And he's launching rockets all the time. So he said, I heard him say, if anyone should know, it should be me. Do you think he knows?
I think that you can't operate in space at the level he does, or operate as a contractor at the level he does, without having clearances that require secrecy. There's all kinds of levels of secrecy. Everyone knows the word classified, right? There's classified projects, but there's also black projects that are unacknowledged special access programs, where you literally, by law, are required to not acknowledge the existence of the program or anything it does. That's literally the
anything it knows.
Yeah, that's literally that they're literally referred to as unacknowledged special access programs.
That would
so
mean
if you're
all
involved,
of his team as well.
So if you're involved with an unacknowledged special access program and someone asks you about it, you have to say you have no idea what they're talking about.
And all of his team.
If they are a part of the program, yeah. But just because someone's read it on an unacknowledged special access program doesn't mean all their employees are.
Elon said that we have 9,000 satellites up there. He's referring to his company Starlink, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spaceship. He argues that if aliens were constantly visiting Earth, the aerospace experts who watch the skies every day would be the first to know.
Well, look, NASA also has said for decades that they had no evidence of extraterrestrial life or UAPs, and last Friday, the federal government released a photo of a triangle craft hovering over the 1972 Apollo space mission. So somebody's not being honest.
Right.
Which also implies a lot of other people know things that they haven't revealed.
I think I've heard you say before, Hal, that you think this intelligent life actually exists amongst us. Yeah, the quote was, they are not occasional visitors. They live secretly alongside humans, but with advanced technology.
We have so many sightings and so many even access to materials and so on. I mean, they're all over the place.
65% of Americans believe intelligent life exists on other planets. 40% of people say military-reported UFOs are probably evidence of extraterrestrial life, according to Pew Research. And 30% of Americans believe UFOs or unidentified flying objects are probably alien ships of life form. And 47% of Americans believe aliens have definitely or probably visited Earth at some point, according to YouGov. Half of Americans believe that UFOs/aliens have definitely or probably visited life at some point. quite a lot of people.
Well, you see the Age of Disclosure film and the people that came forward. I mean, you had Clapper, head of the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and Senator Rubio at the time, now in his elevated position and so on. You now have people of real quality, and you know they're not lying, and they're coming forth and saying, this is real, and we got to deal with it, and there's a lot we don't know about it.
Could you be wrong?
I don't think it's about whether I'm wrong or Al's wrong. You'd have to believe that senior leadership across the government, the military, the intelligence community that has access to classified information and is saying, based on the classified information they have seen, this is a real situation. You'd have to believe all of those people are lying for some bizarre, unexplained reason. So I find that hard to believe.
Could it be the case that all of those people were misinterpreting what they were seeing? They saw something, fighter pilots saw something moving in their visors when they're up in their machines.
Not really, because
in some cases that could be the case, but then when you have actual materials, crash craft, bodies that aren't human.
Also, a lot of these sightings, they're now in the process of, the White House, cabinet members are in the process of identifying where the evidence exists within federal agencies and the military so they can get access to it themselves and then determine from there what can safely be shared with the public. I think once they get their hands on more evidence, then a plan will be put in place for telling the world this conclusion. And I think it's like
more close.
Fait accompli, basically. Like, it's going to get to that point relatively soon.
If we get to that point and you get personally invited in to wherever they're keeping these materials and you get to see every single file that exists, and as you go through those files, you realize that a lot of what you've been told is not true because there's other explanations. How would it fundamentally change the way that you see the world?
Some of the UAP we've seen, take the famous, everybody knows, the Tic Tac UFO, right? That Commander Dave Fravor, the Navy fighter pilot, interacted with in 2004, right?
I'll put that on the screen for anyone that hasn't seen it.
Great. And so take that UAP, for example. Multiple data collection systems, and Commander Dave Fravor, a legend in the Navy, Top Gun guy, commander of an entire naval strike group, right? Total badass, legend of a guy. He sees this with his own eyes, and a bunch of data collection systems capture data confirming it's real. This UAP went from hovering above the ocean to instantly being at 80,000 feet, which is the entrance to space, right? And it did that maneuver all afternoon. The amount of energy required to do that is so bonkers. No human beings have the ability to create that much energy, right, in a localized area for an aircraft. Right. And so, to answer your question, if we find out, the unthinkable, that this is not non-human intelligent life, that some humans have figured out how to crack that technology and did it as recent as 2004 when the Tic Tac incident happened, that would be even more mind-blowing than accepting that life from elsewhere is here and has been here a long time, because that would mean that some group of humans leapfrogged the rest of all of humanity technologically by thousands of years and then seemingly did nothing with that.
Or it could be something else. That's the nature of unusual things. They become great stories. So I think in the case of the Tic Tac incident, again, what I'm trying to do is interrogate this from all angles. Could it have been something else?
Look, could it be any isolated event like that? You could do the whole could it be this, could it be that thing, but it's the you got to take a step back and look at the collective. It's one report like that after another from credible people since World War II. During World War II, pilots were seeing what they called Foo Fighters, like these orbs that would move alongside our fighter jets, right? They would they would move in line with them.
And now we have people on ships seeing these things enter the water and then moving at
impossible speeds,
knots or something, which no human being could
as far as I know, our fastest submarines go 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, something like
these
that.
Things are going hundreds of miles an hour under the ocean. So these craft are transmedium. They're seen in space, they're seen in the air, they're seen underwater. there's just too much activity to ignore it.
Yeah, and that would be a hard one to say, well, is there some sonar thing that makes you think something is doing that? But it's seen enough times under enough different conditions that we just have to accept it as real.
Is there a reason why this hasn't been captured on like an iPhone? In 4K?
There's been a lot of stuff captured on phones and video cameras. In that scene in the Age of Disclosure that I mentioned, where Hal and some of the other people break down how these things are working, and they describe that they're creating a warp bubble around the craft. That warp bubble also makes it very hard to get a clear video of something, because you're taking a photo or a video through essentially a space-time barrier.
Yeah, space-time barrier.
It's like the equivalent of taking pictures of trying to take video of like koi fish in a pond from above the water. It's going to look all distorted because you're going through the water. If you're trying to video or take a photo through this bubble, it makes it pretty hard, and then you end up with the kind of videos we see.
You're probably familiar with this NASA report that they produced on UAPs, Independent Study Team report, where they essentially say that they don't believe that these UAPs are aliens. Why would NASA be lying?
Like all these big bureaucracies, there's people who are aware of the truth, and then there's people who have the truth kept from them. Or, one of the people I interviewed was Mike Gold, who was on the UAP, the NASA UAP task force, and he talked about how that effort was flawed from the start. They didn't want to have a result that said NASA has all this information that they've kept from the public. They wanted the result that they landed on, which is there's nothing to see here. And they were really discouraged from, for example, the that image of a triangle, what clearly appears to be a triangle craft over the moon. They were told not to include that in their report. Like they were not set up to tell the world the truth.
In your view, is it possible that aliens aren't real? Is it possible?
I think
if it's using,
so you think it's impossible?
Yeah, using the term alien, has a certain connotation about it. So we can certainly say, the evidence is absolutely clear that there is some form of life with advanced technology. If you want to say, well, what can I prove about it? Well, those are still unknowns that we're trying to suss out.
I got access at a very high level of the government, the military intelligence community, and there were a lot of people who talked to me off the record that wouldn't go on camera. There were a lot of people who couldn't tell me about classified information. I didn't want to know classified information, but they all made it very clear, not just on camera but off the record, that there is evidence at a classified level that is clear as day. Like some video taken when like the bubble is turned off and you can see a craft of non-human origin, clear as day. And there is evidence of the technology that's been recovered and of these bodies. And if you put yourself in my shoes, when you have so many senior people across the military, government intelligence community telling you this, it's really just impossible to ignore it. Especially when most of them aren't even friends. They're not like ideologically aligned or politically aligned. They're all just different groups of people.
I'm less compelled by eyewitnesses. Yeah. This is the problem, because I'm such a big true crime fan. You hear about all the bloody cases where eyewitness said this, and then they find out the serial killer wasn't that person, or that thing didn't happen. So, and I also just have my own experiences of like thinking I saw things when I was younger.
Here's an interesting thing you just made me think of. So in the film, Rubio and General Jim Clapper, yes, two people who are completely ideologically and politically opposed to each other, made the same really intelligent point. And they both have knowledge at a classified level of this situation. They both said a problem we as humans have is that there's something in the human psyche that says, I cannot wrap my head around or prepare for things I haven't seen or experienced, right? And time again throughout history, that has proven to be like a human flaw, right? Rubio goes on to say that the greatest intelligence failures in U.S. history come from a lack of imagination. And he cites a few examples. He says, we never would have imagined the Japanese could figure out how to get torpedoes through the straits and hit us at Pearl Harbor until they did. He says, we never would have imagined terrorists would fly to the homeland, learn to fly commercial planes, and then use them in a terrorist attack until they did, right? He says some other examples too. But time and time again, not wrapping our head around a set of circumstances that, and using our imagination to think about what might happen or what might be happening, it's bit us in the ass. And he ends his line of thought by saying, lack of imagination leads to strategic surprise, like Pearl Harbor, like 9/11. And sometimes strategic surprise changes the course of history. Mm-hmm. And so, him and other people I interviewed think it's really important to get ahead of this, as opposed to waiting for something to happen, as opposed to waiting for, to find out the hard way that China, cracked this technology before us and used it as in an act of war, or non-human intelligent life does something unpredictable, and then all of a sudden the U.S. government's on its heels, and so are other governments on their heels, explaining to the public what they've known for a long time.
I've often heard that the reason why they don't tell the general public that these things exist is because the general public aren't ready for this information. Is that an argument? I've not really heard you guys say that.
Yeah, no, there are people involved in gatekeeping this information that don't think the public can handle the truth. Hal recently told me that people in the legacy program are pointing to the age of disclosure and saying, look, this film reveals a lot, and people aren't losing their shit, People aren't jumping out of windows. It's not causing chaos in society. Like, the public can handle the base facts.
Of all the things you've heard, Dan, what was the most compelling story or anecdote that you heard that convinced you?
It was really just the sheer number of very high-level military government intelligence officials who were telling me in private settings to my face, that at a classified level, they know with absolute certainty this is real.
But if you had to pick one story?
Oh, I mean, it really wasn't one thing for me. It was the overall. It's like, for example, I interviewed Rubio and Senator Gillibrand on the same day. They both participated in the film and did lengthy interviews with me, and both looked me in the face and told me they thought this was the most important documentary that's ever been made, and that this was really important to bring this information out in a thoughtful way to the public and make them aware of what's happening. You can't unhear stuff like that, and it makes an impact on you.
What about you, Hal? What was the most persuasive thing that tipped you over the edge from maybe being agnostic to believing that there are non-human intelligent life amongst us?
Well, it's looking at the technology, which is so advanced that I'm essentially certain that no us or our adversaries could have made it. So somebody actually made it, and it has to be somebody who knows a lot more about physics than we do. I mean, there's nowhere to go but to say, okay, there's somebody who is way beyond humans to develop that kind of technology and display it.
Of all the evidence that's been released and all of the rumours and videos and, going back to the crop fields that we used to hear about many years ago, presumably there's lots of this stuff that you don't believe, that you think is nonsense.
Oh, there's definitely
tons of
there's
that.
tons of reports that are that when you look into them seem like bullshit, for sure.
Because, one of the things people often say is that alien encounter descriptions perfectly match the pop culture of their era. So people saw flying saucers in the 1950s after sci-fi movies popularized them, and grey aliens in the 1980s after books like Communion popularized them. And this kind of suggests that sightings are born from human imagination versus...
Well, I think that's a reasonable place to come to. I think a lot of the reports that we get, we can generally set aside as being, just manufactured by humans who get caught up in this sort of a give and take on social media and so on. But nonetheless, when you really zero in on actual evidence of technologies and evidence of bodies, there you can't just say it's it's just social contagion.
When I'm thinking about the technologies, when I watched the Tic Tac video, it's kind of blurry and I don't really know what I'm looking at. There's this thing moving around on the screen that's black and white, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. And I think this has always been the struggle with it, is we're so used to consuming content in high definition that we can clearly, and it appears to be the case that so many of these UAP videos are in the distance and kind of blurry and vague. So it makes them harder to believe. And I think we're all longing for a solid video. You talked about them going in and out of the water. how come someone's not got if someone like falls over, and we capture it all on camera these days, CCTV cameras on every high street, why is there not like a solid video of something going in the water and out the water?
Look, multiple people said on camera they have seen with their own eyes classified videos that are indisputable. And some of them told me specifics, like that story I told you, the first video Jay Stratton was shown when he went down this rabbit hole. It was a triangle craft hovering over a nuclear weapons site. Air Force security guards had filmed it on a little VHS camera that they had. It was hovering long enough for them to do that. That kind of evidence exists, but it's just still classified.
Will it be coming out, do you think?
I hope so. I know this process is playing out right now where people like Jay Stratton are helping the administration find where the evidence exists so they can get their hands on it and then determine whether it can safely be declassified. Like, that process is definitely playing out right now.
Do you trust the Trump administration to release all of the available information?
I don't think it's a question of do we trust the current administration will release it. It's do we think all these federal agencies and branches of the military are going to turn over the evidence they have to the administration? That's the question. And the jury's still out on that. They're not right now. They're pushing back, and they're pushing back hard. And that's why the administration is working with people like Stratton, like Jay Stratton, who over 16 years has learned where a lot of this evidence is. They're working with people like him to find out where the evidence sits, who's gatekeeping it at each of these different organizations, and how to get to it. So they're doing a fact-finding mission right now.